Welcome to Let's Chat with Grace. Hey, I'm Grace Frank, and today we have Dan Beaulieu, a loan consultant and a heavy investor in real estate, and Eddie Bodner, also a great investor in real estate and an agent. So, Dan, welcome to Chattanooga.
Thank you so much for having me. Psyched to be here.
Yeah, so right now you live in Nashville?
Knoxville, actually.
Knoxville,
yeah,
okay.
We moved
all right.
there pretty recently, about a year ago,
Okay.
for my wife's job.
Okay, great. And so let's talk a little bit about the investing side first before we go into loan consulting, which is a huge area and lots of deep dive right now. But so let's talk about a couple of great stories as an investor that you've had.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a hard money lender is really cool. Because I get to see the best and the worst in other investors' deals, and it teaches me what to watch out for personally, right? And also teaches me how to find deals, right? So I always ask people, "Oh, that's a great deal. How did you find it?"
Right, yeah.
So it allowed me to do some really targeted marketing. I primarily fix and flip out of state. I actually do deals in Vermont, believe it or not. I used to live up there. So the marketing we do in Vermont, primarily just online stuff, and people will reach out to us and say, "I'm really desperate. Can you please buy my house?" Right?
Yeah.
And so we deal with the biggest motivation in sellers. And so the stuff we see really allows us we can help people, right?
Right.
But we also see the worst in humanity at the same time.
Yeah.
Some really dark stuff, unfortunately.
Money takes the worst out, brings the worst out of people.
It certainly does. Now, the best part about doing that is these people literally have nowhere else to turn sometimes. There was a deal we did a couple weeks ago where when we made the lady an offer, she actually broke down in tears. And she was so thankful that we were able to get her money on Monday. You know, she was getting into some legal trouble, and she's like, I need this fast. And so we worked out a deal where we were able to get her some money in her bank account, like really fast within 3 days. So just being able to help people from that standpoint is truly amazing. Now we've seen some stuff. There was one house we did a few years ago, and during the clean out, we found dead cats. She hadn't actually been upstairs in years or knew how many cats she had in the house. So that during the clean out, I mean, it was just a
Cat
a
clean
total
outs are
disaster.
really challenging,
It was
isn't it?
really bad. And there was satanic poetry on the bedroom walls. I mean, she was in a really dark place.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the only thing she wanted out of this whole thing was, $100,000 and to move to Spain and start a new life.
Well, hey.
Yeah. And for us, it was a fantastic deal. I mean, one of the best deals I've ever done. And for her, she was so thankful just to be done with this property, which she had attached some really negative emotions to. And she was struggling with mental health and stuff like that. That was attached to that house. And so we were able to give her a way out. She was so embarrassed by the condition of the property that, when we went in there, I was like, "Look, I've seen it all, don't worry about it." And it was during COVID, so I was wearing a mask, thankfully. So she couldn't see the actual gasp on my face when I smelled the smell walking through the door.
Yeah.
My goodness. But, she didn't want a lot of people walking through her house, just me. And that was embarrassing enough, right?
Yeah.
And so we're actually able to help these people on a deeper level. And that's what I think is truly amazing about being a real estate investor. And of course, we enjoy money as well. That is a nice benefit to this whole thing and the freedom that can entail.
Right. So you talked about things you've learned from other investors about how to find good deals. So what's been one of the best strategies that you've learned about finding good deals?
That's a great question. Now, strategies involve, really putting in the work. The people that are finding the best deals out there in this market are pounding phones. They're door knocking.
Right.
If they're sending direct mail, they're spending a lot of money. One guy in Knoxville right now is spending $150,000 per month in direct mail.
That's
the small guy cannot
wow.
compete with that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You can't go to number one in Google anymore People have been doing that for 7 or 8 years now. And so you just can't compete and get on Google the first page. So the small guy coming in right now has to be willing to put in the work. Cold calling, right? Text messaging now is, there's fines people are getting and stuff.
Yeah.
You can no longer do that. But you can still reach out to people. You can drive for dollars. You can send them actual handwritten letters that they will open if you place it into their mailbox directly. So it involves putting in a lot of work right now. And also, of course, connections, networking,
Yeah.
going to networking events, meeting wholesalers. It just involves getting out there, putting yourself out there and doing the work.
Yeah, there's, doing the work is the key. And I think a lot of people think that real estate is easy, and it's not. There's a lot of hard work involved in it, but there's a lot of rewards. One of the biggest things that I try to tell people, one of the most important things is consistency. You can't kind of do something. You have to consistently do it in order to have results.
That's exactly right. Consistency. You can't send one batch of direct mail and hope that you're going to get a deal. You have to consistently hit them for 6 months to a year,
Yeah.
And it's the same, I'm sure, with being a successful real estate agent as a successful real estate investor.
Right.
The same amount of effort. It's really just lead generation.
Yeah. Well, and so it sounds like you've had some really rewarding times just really helping people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And is that how you got into it from the beginning, or what made you interested in this avenue of real estate?
To be honest with you, it was when I got laid off from oil and gas in 2016.
Yeah.
And I said, I really hate being an employee. I don't really want to find another job, but I have bills to pay.
Right.
So how am I going to do that? And Flip or Flop was really popular at the time,
Yeah.
Tarek and Christine.
Yeah.
And so I was watching that all the time. I was like, I can do that. They'd go design a house and make, quote unquote, $100,000, $150,000 on this flip. I'm like, that looks easy. I could do that, right? So without knowing anything at all, I called an agent off a sign I was driving by, and I literally said, hey, are you taking new clients right now? That's how little I knew, as if like she was full or something. Yeah, right. Like, of course she's going to take me. So I said, hey, I want to flip a house. Can you find me a house? I bought one off the MLS, did all the work myself. And at the end of it, I made $35,000. And I was like, great, I can do this. So as a long-winded answer to your question, I got into it because I needed to pay my bills. But then later on, when I started doing my own marketing direct to sellers is when I really started seeing that I could actually help people.
Right. Eddie, so we've known each other for a very long time.
Yes.
Probably 12, 13 years.
It is, 2010 when I started.
Well, that's when you started, and I was helping you as an agent,
Yep.
and then you became an agent, and now you're working with our group. And so, you've done a lot of wholesaling, you've done flips. So what's your favorite thing?
I like it all. I mean, that's really why I do a combination of those
Yeah.
things right now. I started out in 2010, and I started door knocking pre-foreclosures. That was year one in real estate for me. So just similar to what Dan said. I mean, I learned right off the bat how to help people in distressed situations. Giving them options, showing them like how they can either get out of their situation, either sell their house, or in some situations they could, work out something with their bank, or, do something other than sell their house. But many times it was, they had to sell their house and move on, So that's what I started out doing. And I realized, well, if you just go and solve people's problems, they'll do business with you. I mean, and that's sellers, buyers, investors, whoever. If you can just be a solution to their problem and their situation, then they'll do business with you. So that's how I started out. And then, once I had started that way, I branched out and did like other types of deals. I started out with the pre-foreclosures. Then I got into doing quite a few probates. Then, a lot of like now it's kind of, different, types of deals that I get. I still do pre-foreclosures. I've done a lot of like marketing to vacant properties. That's been really good for me. So really it's just been more or less like getting in there and kind of figuring out, okay, what is this person's situation? What can I do to help them out with that? And that's also kind of how the real estate license came into play with that. You know, after about
Right.
5 years or so of wholesaling and flipping, I was like, okay, well, you know, and I saw some other friends, you know, that had their license and they, you know, they primarily were investors, but they had their license for either MLS access or, you know, sometimes they would list their own properties or whatever. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to throw that into the mix. And so I did. And I was like, well, you know, I don't mind the agent thing too bad myself, you know. And then at some point, I started like kind of mixing that with my wholesaling where like, you know, if I didn't have a deal that my buyers would want, I had access to the MLS or other agents or property managers, people that could send me deals. And I didn't necessarily have to have it under contract or own the property. I
Right.
could just get a commission. So that just allowed me to capitalize more on my leads and essentially, you know, do more deals by having a license.
Right. Well, and I think, you know, like I've learned since I was a child, my grandfather taught me you have 5 or 6 buckets that you work. You know, some are short term buckets, some are medium term, some are long term, but you work different buckets. And, you know, then you always have something kind of filling up.
Yep.
So if you were to tell a new investor coming into real estate right now and starting to invest in real estate, Dan, what would be your message to them?
My message would be don't give up. You're going to get discouraged. You're going to get burned. If you stick with it, I guarantee you'll find success. I mean, the only thing that you need in this business is not intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is just hard work and sticking with it.
Right.
That's
Eddie?
literally it.
What would be your
Yeah, I
advice?
mean that's a great point, Dan. I mean, like I would say, you know, obviously that the persistence or perseverance and just continuing to press ahead when things don't make sense or when they get difficult or just, you know, when you feel like giving up. You know, I mean, I've had those moments myself. I mean, multiple times over the past 13 years, but you know, at the same time, you know, you have to see that, you know, once you get to a certain point, things are more rewarding. But, you know, so that obviously the persistence, but then also just, I mean, the people you have around you. I mean, because I've heard early on, you know, your network equals your net worth, you know, the people you have around you. And I've seen investors that, you know, in a way, I would even categorize them as pretty lazy. You probably know one or two that if I mention their names, you would, you know, you're already laughing, so you probably already know. That are really, I would categorize them as fairly lazy compared to other investors, but they've been able to position themselves in a way that they utilize other people or leverage other people to either bring them leads and deals or money or whatever, and it made things easier on them. You know, which
Right.
that make, you know, obviously we want to, you know, to leverage as much as we can, but you know, I've seen some people be able to do that better than others just based on who they know. You know, so I'd say your network is one of the main thing. Really, you know, and I do coaching with some new investors, and that is what I usually tell them is, well, the first thing you need to do is to go and just find your local RIA group, you know, or your investor
Right.
meetup, and start getting connected with your local investor community because that's going to give you resources to get started. I mean, I think that's really like, you know, step one. That's what I did. That's how we met.
Yeah.
I called another investor's bandit sign, or actually a couple of guys, and they told me about the RIA group that we had in Chattanooga. And I think I met you like either the first or second meeting, you know, and then we went out and looked at properties and started doing some business. But that's how I did it. And I think that makes the most sense to start that way.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's been great having you guys today. Thanks for talking to us about your investing strategies and giving those new investors some ideas on what not to do or to do. So thanks for today. It's been great talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.